The staff at Boston's most exclusive restaurants don't use his name. They call him the Viper. Arthur Vance, the billionaire titan of Vance Strategic Holdings, was a man who didn't just command a room. He suffocated it. Waiters with decades of experience would suddenly spill trays. Maître d'hôtel would break into a cold sweat. He was known to eviscerate a restaurant's reputation with a single, scathing review, or worse, buy the building just to evict them. So, when he walked into the Gilded Sparrow on a Tuesday night, the entire floor staff fled to the kitchen, all except one. Elena Sanchez. It was her third day, and she was about to do the unthinkable. The Gilded Sparrow, nestled in the historic brownstone heart of Boston's Back Bay, was a temple of modern gastronomy. It was a place of hushed tones, heavy silverware, and a wine list thicker than a telephone book. Its clientele was old money, new tech, and the politicians who dined on both. But on this particular Tuesday, a pall had fallen over the dining room. Arthur Vance had arrived. He hadn't made a reservation. He never did. He simply appeared, a thundercloud in a bespoke $10,000 Tom Ford suit, his jaw set, and his eyes, a cold, piercing blue, already scanning the room for imperfections. He was preceded by his reputation, which was far more terrifying than his presence. "Table 12. Francois, the maitre d', whispered to a busboy, his face pale and slick with perspiration. "Quickly, and send for Chloe." "No, not Chloe. She cried last time. Send for someone." In the back, near the polishing station, the staff was huddled. "I won't do it, Francois," said Chloe, a veteran waitress. "Last time at L'Étoile, he had a waiter fired on the spot. Fired. Because his water had a sliver of lemon in it, and he hadn't asked for it. The man had a family." "And remember Sato's Bistro?" added another waiter, Mark. "He claimed his espresso was 2 degrees too cold. 2 degrees. He bought their debt, foreclosed, and the building is a parking garage now. He's not a customer. He's a plague." Elena Sanchez, on her third shift, continued to polish a Riedel wine glass, holding it up to the light. She was 23, with intelligent, observant eyes, and a calmness that seemed unnervingly out of place. She'd taken this job, giving up her scholarship at Suffolk University, to pay for the mountain of medical bills her mother, Maria, had accumulated after a sudden, debilitating illness. Elena had seen the inside of ICU waiting rooms, argued with insurance adjusters, and held her mother's hand while doctors gave devastating prognoses. A rude, rich man in a fancy restaurant did not, in her estimation, qualify as an emergency. "So, no one is taking his order?" Elena asked simply, setting the glass down. "Are you insane?" Chloe hissed. "He'll end you. He'll find a reason. Your apron is creased. You made eye contact for too long. You didn't make it for long enough. It's a game he plays, and the only way to win is not to approach him." Francois wrung his hands. "He's been sitting for 5 minutes. He's looking at his watch." Elena watched Mr. Vance. He was indeed looking at his watch, a slim, elegant Patek Philippe. He looked less like a predator and more like a man in a hurry. Annoyed, yes. Impatient, certainly. But the theatrical fear from the staff seemed excessive. "He's just a man," Elena said, untying her half apron and smoothing it. "And he's a customer. He wants to order dinner." "Elena, no," Francois pleaded, his voice a strangled whisper. "He'll have me fired. He knows the owner." "He'll be more likely to have you fired if his paying customer is ignored," Elena countered logically. She picked up a leather-bound menu and a silver water pitcher. "I'll take him." She stepped out of the service alcove and began the long walk across the plush, silent carpet toward table 12. The dining room didn't just go quiet, it seemed to hold its collective breath. Chloe covered her mouth. Francois looked like he was about to faint. Elena Sanchez, the new waitress who had nothing left to lose, walked straight into the viper's nest. Arthur Vance didn't look up as she approached. His attention was fixed on his phone, his thumb scrolling aggressively, a muscle in his jaw clenched and unclenched, the only sign of the simmering impatience that rolled off him in waves. Elena stood by the table for a full 15 seconds. She didn't cough, shuffle, or stammer. She simply waited. Finally, with an audible sigh of irritation, he snapped his phone face down on the table and looked up. His eyes were exactly as described, cold, intelligent, and utterly devoid of welcome. They were the eyes of a man who evaluated, calculated, and dismissed, all in a single glance. He was appraising her, and she could feel the weight of his judgment. He expected her to tremble, to apologize for interrupting his thoughts. What? His voice was a low, gravelly rasp. Not a shout, but a blade. "Good evening, sir," Elena said, her voice even and professional. "My name is Elena. I'll be taking care of you tonight. Can I start you with some water, or perhaps a cocktail?" Arthur Vance stared at her. His glare deepened. He was so accustomed to two reactions, fawning obsequiousness or stark terror, that her simple, straightforward professionalism was a disruption. It was like a computer program encountering a line of code it couldn't pass. "I didn't ask for a biography," he growled. "I'm waiting for someone. Go away." Eleanor didn't move. "Of course. Would you like that water while you wait? We have still or sparkling?" A flicker of something, surprise, annoyance, crossed his features. He was testing her, and she was refusing to fail. He leaned back, crossing his arms. The movement pulled the jacket of his expensive suit tight against his shoulders. "Did they send you because you're new?" he mused, his voice dripping with condescension. "Did they draw lots? Are you the sacrifice?" "They sent me because you're a customer who hasn't been served, Mr. Vance," Elena replied, meeting his gaze. "I can't speak for my colleagues, but I find it's usually easier to just do the job. Now, about that water?" For a second, the entire restaurant seemed to tilt. Arthur Vance was silent. He studied her, his head tilted slightly. He wasn't just looking at her. He was analyzing her. He saw her crisp, clean uniform. He saw the lack of jewelry, save for a simple watch. He saw the absence of fear in her eyes. And it intrigued him. "Still," he said abruptly. "No ice, and no fruit." "Of course," Elena nodded. She poured the still water from the pitcher she'd carried over, her hand perfectly steady. She placed a reserved placard on the second-place setting. "Let me know if your guest arrives, or if you change your mind about that cocktail." She turned and walked away. From the service station, Chloe and Francois were gaping as if she'd just defused a bomb. "What? What did he say?" Francois stammered. "He asked for water," Elena said, already rearranging her station for her other tables. And I gave it to him." Back at table 12, Arthur Vance watched her. He watched her move to table 9, a group of 4 laughing tourists. He watched her smile, a small, genuine smile, as she took their order. He watched her correct, with quiet authority, the busboy who was trying to clear plates too early. She was efficient. She was professional. She was utterly, completely, and bafflingly unafraid of him. He picked up his phone and sent a text to a number not in his regular contacts. "Donovan, the new waitress at the Gilded Sparrow. Name tag says Eleanor. I want a full background check. By morning." A moment later, a reply. "Yes, sir." Arthur Vance put his phone down, a thoughtful, almost dangerous expression on his face. The game, he realized, had just changed. 20 minutes later, Arthur's guest arrived. He was the opposite of Vance's sharp, severe elegance. The man, who introduced himself as Mr. Harrison, was soft, fleshy, and draped in a suit that was a size too large, as if to hide his bulk. He wore a gaudy, diamond-encrusted watch that screamed new money, and his smile was a slick, practiced veneer. "Arthur." "Always a pleasure," Harrison boomed, loud enough to make the other diners wince. He slid into the booth uninvited. Arthur Vance did not smile. "You're late, Harrison. You have 5 minutes." "Always business, Artie," the man chuckled, snapping his fingers. "Waitress! Girl, get over here. Bottle of your most expensive scotch." Eleanor, who had been monitoring the table from a distance, was already on her way. The snap of his fingers had made her skin crawl, but her expression remained a mask of polite neutrality. "Good evening, sir," she said, her focus on Harrison. "We have an excellent Macallan 25, or perhaps the Glenfiddich 40-year. Just bring the most expensive one, and don't be slow about it." Harrison waved her off, already turning his attention back to Vance. Elena glanced at Arthur. He was watching Harrison with a look of undisguised contempt. "My client isn't happy, Arthur," Harrison said, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial murmur. He slid a thick manila envelope across the table. "He feels you're not taking his partnership seriously." "Your client is an extortionist, Harrison, and I don't partner with parasites," Vance said, his voice dangerously low. He didn't touch the envelope. "That's harsh language," Harrison tisked. "This is just business, a simple transaction. You pull your bid for the city's green energy contract and this," he tapped the envelope, "stays private. Simple. Thorn Industries doesn't have the infrastructure to handle that contract, and the city knows it," Arthur countered. "They will if your reputation is in flames," Harrison smirked. "And the contents of this envelope will burn very, very hot. Think of your family name, Arthur. Think of Ilara." At the mention of that name, Arthur Vance's face went white. The cold indifference vanished, replaced by a flash of pure, unguarded rage. His hand clenched into a fist on the table. "You will not say her name." It was at that moment Elena returned, a crystal decanter of the Macallan 25 on a silver tray. She sensed the shift in the atmosphere immediately. The air was no longer just tense, it was toxic. "Your scotch, sir," she said, placing a glass in front of Harrison. Harrison, buoyed by his perceived victory, leered at her. "Well, aren't you a pretty little thing? Tell me, sweetheart, what time do you get off?" Elena's spine stiffened. "I'm here until closing, sir." "Will there be anything else?" "Oh, I think so," Harrison said, his eyes roaming over her. "A girl like you? I bet you could use a real tip. Something to make your night worthwhile." "Sir, I'm just here to take your order," Elena said, her voice firming, a cold edge creeping in. "I like them feisty," Harrison chuckled, reaching out to grab her wrist. Before his fingers could even graze her sleeve, Arthur Vance moved. He didn't shout. He didn't stand. He simply picked up his unused water glass, the one with no ice and no lemon, and calmly, deliberately, poured its entire contents into Harrison's lap. A shocked, sputtering gasp erupted from Harrison. The ice-cold water soaked his expensive trousers. "She," Arthur Vance said, his voice as cold as the water, "is here to do her job. You are here to deliver a message. You have done so. Now, get out of my sight." You, Harrison stammered, scrambling out of the booth, drenched and humiliated. "If you or your boss, Marcus Thorne, ever approach my staff, or any staff, like that again, I won't just win the green energy contract. I will buy your company, sell it for parts, and personally ensure you never work in this city again. Am I clear?" Harrison, his face purple with rage, knew this was not a bluff. He grabbed the manila envelope, sputtered, and stormed out of the restaurant, leaving a trail of water and stunned silence. Arthur Vance sat alone at the table. He looked at his hand, still clenched in a fist. He seemed not angry, but shaken. He looked up and met Eleanor's eyes. She was still standing there, holding the Scotch decanter, her expression unreadable. He expected her to be grateful or terrified, or to fawn over him. She did none of those things. "Mr. Vance," she said quietly, "your table is wet. Let me get you a new napkin." Elena returned with a stack of fresh linen napkins and expertly cleaned the water from the polished mahogany table. She replaced his soaked napkin with a fresh one. Throughout the entire process, she didn't say, "Thank you." She didn't acknowledge what he'd done. She just cleaned up the mess. This, more than anything, seemed to stabilize him. The rage receded, and the cold, analytical mask returned, but with a crack in it. He was watching her, and for the first time, his expression was one of genuine, unadulterated confusion. "Are you not?" he started, then stopped. "Are I not what, sir?" she asked, without looking up from her task. "Grateful? Scared? That man is a pig." "He is," Elena agreed, finally meeting his gaze. "But I've handled men like him before. I didn't need you to intervene, Mr. Vance, though I appreciate the dramatic flair." A ghost of a smile, so fast she almost missed it, touched his lips. "He was interrupting my evening." "Right," she said, not believing him for a second. "Are you ready to order dinner, or will you be leaving as well?" He was, by all accounts, the most feared man in Boston. A billionaire who could ruin her with a single phone call, and she was speaking to him as if he were a grumpy teenager. "I'll have the duck," he said abruptly, "and a glass of the Cheval Blanc." "Excellent choice, sir," she said, and walked away. The rest of the meal passed in near total silence. Elena served him with flawless, unobtrusive professionalism. She refilled his wine. She cleared his plate. She didn't try to make small talk, and she didn't act like anything special had happened. From the kitchen, Francois and Chloe watched, dumbfounded. He hadn't complained. He hadn't sent the duck back. He was just eating. Finally, Elena brought the check. The meal, with the absurdly expensive scotch Harrison had ordered and abandoned, and his own high-end wine and food, was astronomical. He took the leather folder, pulled out a black, featureless Centurion card, and handed it to her. She returned moments later with the merchant copy and a pen. He scrawled a signature, his handwriting sharp and angular, almost aggressive. "Thank you, Mr. Vance. Have a good night," she said, taking the folder. "Wait," he said. She paused. He was looking at her, his expression intense. "You are competent. It's a rare quality." "It's the bare minimum for the job, sir," she replied. "No," he said, shaking his head slightly. "It's not." He stood, adjusted his suit jacket, and walked out of the restaurant. He didn't look back. Elena opened the check folder to retrieve the signed slip. Her eyes widened. The bill was $1,800. He had written in a $5,000 tip. Her heart hammered. That was almost 2 months of her mother's most expensive medication. She was staring at it, stunned into silence, when she noticed something else. On the back of the thick, heavy stock receipt, he had written something in the same sharp, angular script. It wasn't a phone number. It wasn't a proposition. It was an address and a time. 1401 Beacon Street, Suite 4500, tomorrow. 9 a.m. Come alone. Ask for Donovan. Chloe rushed over, her eyes wide. What is it? What did he tip? She saw the number and gasped. Elena! $5,000. Chloe, look at this, Elena said, her voice a near whisper, turning the receipt over. Chloe read the address, and her hand flew to her mouth. Oh my God, Elena, that's the headquarters of Vance Strategic Holdings. That's his office, the top floor. What did you do? Elena stared at the address. This wasn't a tip. It wasn't a reward. It felt like a summons or a trap. Elena didn't sleep. She sat at the small, cluttered kitchen table in her North End apartment, the receipt lying in front of her like a high-stakes poker chip. The $5,000 tip was a miracle. It was life-changing. It was also, she suspected, a test. Her mother, Maria, wrapped in a blanket, came out of her room. Elena, you're home late. Is everything all right? Elena explained the evening. The rude man, the other, slimier man, the water, the tip, and finally the note. Maria looked terrified. Elena, no. This is not for us. Men like that. They are billionaires, yes, but they are dangerous. They see a girl like you, a smart, beautiful girl, and they think they can own you. You take the tip, Misha. You've earned it. But you do not go to that address. I don't think it's like that, Ma, Elena said, though a knot of apprehension was twisted in her stomach. He wasn't leering. He wasn't like Harrison. He was something else. He was angry. And when that man mentioned a name, Ilara, he looked broken. Broken men with billions of dollars are the most dangerous kind, Maria said, her voice firm. You have your classes to get back to. This is just a job. Don't get involved. But what if it is a job? Elena countered, her mind, the business student mind, starting to whir. He saw me work. He saw me handle Harrison. He called me competent. He didn't ask me to a hotel, Ma. He asked me to his office. Suite 4500. That's the C-suite. That's not a proposition. That's an interview. Or an interrogation, Maria whispered. That man Harrison. What if he's angry? What if Vance is just trying to use you as a witness? It's too risky. Eleanor looked at the pile of bills on the counter. Final notice, stamped in red. She looked at her mother's tired face. She had been brave in the restaurant because she had nothing to lose. But here, in this apartment, was everything she stood to lose. This was a risk. But staying put, slowly drowning in debt while her mind atrophied polishing glasses, that was a different kind of risk. It was a slow death. At 8:15 a.m., Elena was standing in front of her closet. She had one good outfit, a pair of charcoal grey trousers, a simple white silk blend blouse, and a black blazer she'd bought at H&M for her Suffolk University interviews. She pulled her hair back into a severe, professional bun. She looked not like a waitress, but like the analyst she had been training to be. At 8:50 a.m., she was standing in the lobby of 1401 Beacon Street. The building was a monument of glass and steel, soaring into the Boston sky. The lobby was a cathedral of white Carrara marble and brushed steel, with a security desk that looked like a fortress. "Can I help you?" the guard asked, his voice flat. "I'm here to see Donovan." "For Mr. Vance," Elena said, her own voice betraying a slight tremor. The guard's eyebrow shot up. He checked a list. "Name? Elena Sanchez." His eyes widened. He tapped on his computer, picked up a phone and murmured, "Ms. Sanchez is here." He hung up. "Go right on up. 45th floor. Mr. Donovan is waiting for you." The elevator ride was silent and terrifyingly fast. Her ears popped. When the doors opened, she wasn't in a reception area. She was in a vast, open-plan office that was almost entirely empty, save for a single desk. Behind the desk sat a man who looked more like a bodyguard than an executive. He was broad, wore a simple dark suit, and had an earpiece. "Ms. Sanchez, I'm Donovan, head of Mr. Vance's personal security." "Security?" Elena's blood ran cold. "Am I in trouble?" "Not at all," Donovan said, his voice surprisingly gentle. "Mr. Vance was impressed. He's in a meeting. He asked me to get your initial impressions about Mr. Harrison." "My impressions?" "You're observant," Donovan said. He gestured to a file on his desk, the background check Arthur had ordered. "Suffolk University, Business Management, 4.0 GPA before your leave of absence. You weren't just serving tables, you were analyzing the room. What did you see?" This was a test. Elena took a breath. "I saw a shakedown. Harrison was a proxy. The envelope was the leverage. The company he mentioned, Thorne Industries, is run by Marcus Thorne. I know him. He's a hostile takeover specialist. He's bidding against Vance Holdings for the new green energy contract. Harrison was there to threaten Mr. Vance into pulling his bid." Donovan stared at her. He hadn't expected that. "And," Elena continued, "the leverage isn't financial. Harrison mentioned a name, Ilara. Mr. Vance's reaction was personal, deeply personal. Whatever is in that envelope, it's not about business, it's about his family, and Marcus Thorne is using it to win a business deal." A slow smile spread across Donovan's face. "You got all that from one 5-minute interaction?" "I read the financial news, Mr. Donovan, and I pay attention." The door to the inner office, a massive slab of frosted glass, hissed open. Arthur Vance stood there, minus his suit jacket, his shirt sleeves rolled up. He looked tired, but his eyes were sharp. "She's right, isn't she?" Donovan said to his boss. "She's terrifyingly right," Arthur said. He nodded at Elena. "In my office. Now." Arthur's corner office was staggering. 2 walls were floor-to-ceiling glass, offering a 180-degree view of Boston Harbor and the city below. It felt like being on top of the world. But the office itself wasn't opulent. It was minimalist, dominated by a massive black ash desk, a wall of books, and a single framed photo. It was a photo of a smiling young woman, maybe 18 or 19, with the same piercing blue eyes as Arthur. "That," Arthur said, his voice quiet, "is Ilara. My sister." He gestured to a chair. Elena sat. He remained standing, looking out the window. "You called me competent last night, Mr. Vance. You paid me a small fortune in a tip, and you summoned me to your office. I don't understand what you want from me." "I want to know why you weren't afraid of me," he said, turning to face her. Elena was taken aback. "I told you, I have bigger problems than a rude billionaire," he finished. "Yes, I heard you. My rudeness, as the press loves to call it, is a tool, Mrs. Sanchez. It's an armor. When you have this much money, people change. They lie, they fawn, they scheme, they want something. Every single person who speaks to me wants something. Rudeness is a filter. It strips away the liars and leaves only the people who are too stupid to be scared, or something else, or people who are just trying to do their jobs," Elena said. "Or that," he conceded. "You were the something else. You didn't fawn, and you certainly aren't stupid. You looked at me like I was just another problem to be managed. And then you saw Harrison, and you weren't afraid of him either. He was just a bully." "Bullies are cowards," she said simply. Arthur sat on the edge of his desk, a profound weariness settling over him. "Marcus Thorne is not just a bully. He's a sociopath. And you, Ms. Sanchez, are now a loose end." "A loose end?" "You heard Harrison threaten me. You saw him try to assault you. You saw me react. You are a witness to a crime. He can't know what you heard or what you'll do. Donovan's men followed Harrison last night. He made a call to Thorne. They're concerned about the Waitress. They might try to silence you, to bribe you, or to threaten you. Elena's heart hammered. Her mother was right. This was dangerous. What do you want me to do? I want to offer you a job, he said. Elena blinked. A job? As what? A waitress in your cafeteria? No, he said, a dry smile appearing. I have enough of those. I'm offering you a position as a junior analyst, effective immediately. I'll pay off your mother's medical debt in full. Call it a signing bonus. I'll reinstate your scholarship at Suffolk, and my company will pay for it. In exchange, you will work for me. And, as my employee, you will be under the full protection of my security detail until the matter with Thorne is resolved. This was staggering. It was an escape. It was everything she'd ever wanted. Why? She asked, her voice thick with suspicion. Why me? You have my background check. I'm a college dropout who serves duck. You're a 4.0 business student who read a hostile negotiation in 5 minutes and wasn't afraid to walk into my office, he corrected. I can teach business strategy, Ms. Sanchez. I can't teach courage. I can't teach integrity. And I sure as hell can't teach whatever it is you have that makes you unflappable. I need that. My company needs it. He paused, and his gaze drifted to the photo of Elara. And I need it. Because I'm about to lose everything. Because of the letters, Elena said. It wasn't a question. Arthur's face hardened. You are dangerously perceptive. Yes. Because of the letters. He walked to a safe hidden behind a minimalist painting and pulled out a different envelope, a copy. He handed it to her. Marcus Thorne and I, Arthur said, grew up together. We went to the same prep schools. Our families were rivals. But we were friends. Once. Then we started our businesses. The rivalry became toxic. My sister Elara, she was bright and beautiful and deeply, deeply troubled. She fell in with a bad crowd in college. She developed an addiction. I was busy. I was building this. He gestured around the office. I was winning. I thought I could fix her later. I sent her money, not time. His voice cracked, just once, a tiny fracture in the steel. She got involved with Thorne. He didn't cause her addiction, but he enabled it. He enjoyed proximity to the Vances, and he enjoyed watching her spiral. He saw it as a way to hurt me. He pointed to the envelope. Elara died of an overdose. These are the letters she wrote in the last few months. Not to me, to him. In them, she's desperate. She's rambling. She blames me. She says I ignored her. She says I was too busy to save her. And she's right. Mr. Vance, Elena began. Thorne is threatening to release these to the press. He cut her off, his voice cold again. He'll paint a picture of me as a monster who let his sister die to build an empire. The rude billionaire who was also a negligent brother. My company's stock will plummet. The board will oust me. The green energy contract will be the least of my problems. My family's name, my legacy. It will all be destroyed. All because I was too arrogant, too busy. He finally sat in his chair, looking less like a titan and more like a man condemned. He wants me to pull my bid by tomorrow at noon, or he goes public. Eleanor looked at the file. She looked at the powerful, broken man in front of her. She looked at the picture of the smiling girl. So, Eleanor said, her voice quiet but clear. This isn't a job offer. No, Arthur said. It's a sinking ship, and I'm offering you a life raft if you'll help me bail water. Elena was silent for a full minute. She didn't look at the view. She didn't look at the expensive furniture. She looked at the file, at the photo of Elara, and at Arthur. Her mind, freed from the drudgery of memorizing wine pairings, kicked into high gear. The fog of the last year, the grief, the debt, the exhaustion, cleared. She was back at Suffolk, in her advanced strategy seminar, being presented with an impossible case study. "Okay," she said. Arthur looked up. "Okay? That's it? You'll take the job?" "I'll take the job," Elena said. "But you're looking at this all wrong. This isn't a legal problem. This isn't even a financial problem. This is a PR problem, a branding problem. A branding problem," he scoffed. "This is blackmail. It's the destruction of my family." "No," Elena said, standing up. She felt a surge of adrenaline, of certainty. "He's blackmailing the Viper. He's threatening the rude billionaire. He's threatening the man who bought Sato's bistro and turned it into a parking lot. That man, that brand, is vulnerable to this. Because it's believable. Of course he let his sister die. He's a monster. That's the narrative Thorne is selling." "So what do you suggest?" Arthur asked, his voice laced with bitter sarcasm. "I send him a fruit basket." "You hold a press conference," Elena said. Arthur stared at her. "What?" "You hold a press conference, this morning, in the next 2 hours, before his noon deadline." "And say what?" he demanded, rising from his chair. "Admit to it. Confirm his story. You're insane. The board will have me removed before I finish my first sentence." "No," Elena said, her voice ringing with authority. She walked to the whiteboard that covered one wall of his office. "You don't admit to his story. You tell your story. You're not the Viper. You're Arthur Vance, a grieving brother. You're a man who made a terrible mistake, who lost his sister to the scourge of addiction, and who has been living with that guilt ever since." She grabbed a marker. "Thorne's weapon is the secret. He's holding the shame over your head. You take the weapon away. You take the shame away. You release the letters yourself." Arthur looked at her, as if she had just suggested she could fly. "Release the letters? To the press? That is the single stupidest idea I have ever heard." "Is it?" Elena challenged, turning to face him. "What happens if he releases them? It's a scandal. What happens if you release them? It's a tragedy. You're not a villain. You're a human. You announce to the world that you are launching a new, massive, charitable foundation, the Elara Vance Foundation for Addiction and Recovery. You endow it with $100 million. You tell the world that you couldn't save your sister, but you will spend the rest of your life and your fortune trying to save others." She was pacing now, a general mapping out a battlefield. "You control the narrative. You get ahead of the story. Marcus Thorne's blackmail is worthless if the secret is already public, and you're the one who told it. He's not a blackmailer. He's just a sad, cruel man trying to profit from a family tragedy. You don't just win this, Mr. Vance. You annihilate him. You turn his greatest weapon into your new, defining purpose." Arthur was speechless. He was surrounded every day by the best lawyers, strategists, and PR minds in the country. They had all told him to pay Thorne, to negotiate, to bury it. And a 23-year-old waitress in an H&M blazer had just handed him a strategy that was so audacious, so terrifying, and so brilliant that it might actually work. "He'll be exposed," Arthur said, the wheels turning in his head. "He'll be seen as the parasite he is." "He will," Elena agreed. "And you'll be seen as a man, not a monster, not the Viper, just a man. People forgive rude, Mr. Vance. They don't forgive cruel, but they will always root for redeemed. This is your redemption." Arthur Vance looked at the marker in her hand. He looked at the fire in her eyes. He had been looking for courage. He'd found a general. "Donovan!" he barked into his intercom. The security chief was in the room in seconds. "Sir?" "Get Sarah," Arthur commanded, referring to his head of PR. "Book the Grand Conference Room. Call the Boston Globe, the Wall Street Journal, Forbes, and every local affiliate. Tell them I have a personal statement, an emergency press conference, in 1 hour." "Sir," Donovan said, shocked but already moving. Arthur turned back to Eleanor. The icy blue in his eyes was gone, replaced by a raging fire. "You're not a junior analyst, Ms. Sanchez," he said. "You're my new senior advisor. Now, come with me. We have work to do." The Grand Conference Room at Vance Strategic Holdings was chaos. Reporters, lured by the promise of an emergency personal statement from the city's most reclusive and hostile billionaire, were packed shoulder to shoulder. Cameras were rolling. Phones were held aloft. The air crackled with anticipation. "Is he selling the company?" one reporter from the Globe whispered. "Hostile takeover," another from Forbes suggested. "The Thorn bid, maybe?" Elena stood in the wings, just off stage. She had a small earpiece connected to Donovan and the PR head, Sarah, who was frantically handing out press packets. Eleanor herself was terrified. Her hands were shaking. This was insane. She'd gone from serving duck to advising a billionaire on a move that could either save him or utterly destroy him. Arthur Vance walked up beside her. He was in a fresh shirt, his suit jacket back on. He looked calm. "They're a pack of sharks," he murmured to her. "You're not a seal, Mr. Vance," she murmured back, repeating the line they'd rehearsed. "You're a man. Just tell them the truth." He looked at her. "Eleanor, if this goes wrong, Donovan has a severance package for you, enough to cover you and your mother for life. He'll get you out of the city." "It's not going to go wrong," she said, though her heart was in her throat. "Be human." He nodded, once. He took a deep breath and walked onto the stage. The room exploded in a volley of flashbulbs. He walked to the simple podium, which bore the Vance Holdings logo. He held up a hand. The room slowly fell silent. "Good morning," he began, his voice amplified, filling the room. It was the same low, gravelly voice, but the blade was gone. It was heavy. "I have not called you here to discuss my company. I have not called you to discuss contracts or earnings. I have called you here to correct a story that has haunted my family for years, and to stop a man who is trying to use my personal tragedy for his own corporate gain." A collective gasp. This was not what they expected. "Many of you know me only by my reputation, a reputation I have, at times, cultivated. The Viper. The rude billionaire. It's a useful shield, but today I am setting it aside." He paused, and his eyes found the photo of Ilara, which was now projected on the giant screen behind him. "This is my sister, Ilara Vance. She died 10 years ago from a drug overdose. She was the light of our family. And I failed her. You could have heard a pin drop. I was busy building this company. I was busy winning. I ignored her calls. I sent checks when I should have sent myself. I was an arrogant, foolish young man who thought every problem could be solved with money. By the time I realized she was truly drowning, it was too late. I have lived with that guilt, that shame, every single day for a decade." In the front row, the Boston Globe reporter was just listening. She wasn't even writing. "Recently," Arthur continued, his voice hardening, "a business rival, Marcus Thorne of Thorne Industries, acquired Personal letters my sister wrote during that dark time. Letters full of her pain, her anger, and her, in my opinion, justified accusations against me. Mr. Thorne has threatened to release these letters to destroy my reputation and force me to pull out of a competitive business deal. He is, in effect, trying to profit from my sister's death. The room erupted. Shouts. Questions. "This is a copy of those letters," Arthur said, holding up the envelope. "We are providing them, unredacted, to every member of the press here. You can read them. They are heartbreaking. And they are true. I was negligent. I was a bad brother." He took a breath. Mr. Thorne believed this was my weakness. He believed I would pay any price to keep my shame a secret. But he's wrong. My greatest shame is not what's in those letters. My greatest shame is that I have done nothing to honor her memory. Until today. Effective immediately, I am announcing the Alara Vance Foundation for Addiction and Recovery. It is being endowed today with $100 million from my personal funds. Another shockwave. This foundation will build and fund state-of-the-art recovery centers, first here in Boston and then across the country. It will fund research. It will provide services to families who, like mine, are watching a loved one disappear. I cannot save Alara. But I will, God help me, spend the rest of my life trying to save everyone else. Thank you. I will not be taking questions about this. But my PR team has the Foundation's charter. He turned and walked off the stage, leaving a stunned, silent room in his wake. Elena met him. He was breathing heavily. He looked lighter. How was that?" he asked. Elena was crying. Tears were streaming down her face. "That," she said, wiping them away, "was human." Across town, in his own high-rise office, Marcus Thorne was watching the press conference live on TV. His face, which had been smug, turned to chalk. The letters, his weapon. He'd just handed Arthur Vance a $100 million shield and a martyr's crown. His phone was ringing. It was his board. It was his lawyers. He was finished. The fallout was immediate and seismic. By noon, Vance wasn't a name associated with fear. It was associated with tragedy and philanthropy. The narrative hadn't just shifted, it had been completely rewritten. The Viper's confession. Vance admits to family tragedy, launches 100 Mehotra Foundation, the Boston Globe, from ruthless to redeemed, Arthur Vance's masterful PR move, Forbes, Thorne Industries in hot water after rivals' shocking revelations, Wall Street Journal. The letters, when published, were indeed heartbreaking. But in the context of Arthur's confession, they didn't paint him as a monster. They painted him as a flawed man who had lost his way and was now, spectacularly, trying to find it. Public sympathy was overwhelmingly on his side. Marcus Thorne was decimated. His board called an emergency meeting and demanded his resignation for unethical competitive practices. The city council, citing the character clause in the bidding, disqualified Thorne Industries from the green energy contract. By 4 p.m., Vance Strategic Holdings was announced as the sole recipient. In Arthur's office, the mood was quiet. Elena, Arthur, Donovan, and Sarah, the PR chief, were watching the news reports. "Sarah," Arthur said, "I want you to coordinate with Ms. Sanchez. She's the new acting executive director of the Alara Vance Foundation. Give her whatever she needs." Sarah, who had been wary of the 23-year-old, now looked at her with pure, unadulterated respect. "Yes, sir. It will be an honor, Ms. Sanchez." "Please," Elena said, her head spinning. "Call me Elena." The day was a blur. Elena's first act was to call her mother. "Ma, I need you to sit down. I got a new job, and I'm paying off the house, and the bills, all of them." She spent the rest of the afternoon in boardrooms, not as a waitress, but as an executive, taking notes, learning the structure of the company, and sitting in on the first planning meeting for the foundation. It was terrifying. It was exhilarating. It was right. At 7 p.m., she was packing her few personal items from her locker at the Gilded Sparrow. She'd already given Francois her 2 weeks' notice, which he'd tearfully, joyfully accepted. I always knew you were special, Elena, he gushed. Always. Chloe gave her a hug. You did it. You walked into the viper's nest and came out a queen. Don't forget about us. Never, Elena promised. She was walking out the door when a familiar voice stopped her. Going somewhere? Arthur Vance was standing by his car, a sleek, understated black Bentley. Mr. Vance, she said, surprised. What are you doing here? My driver is taking you home, he said. It's part of the security protocol, and I wanted to ask you a question. Okay, she said, clutching her bag. That night, when Harrison was harassing you, you weren't afraid of him, and you weren't afraid of me, but you looked angry. Why? Elena thought for a moment. Because he was wasting time, because he was being disrespectful not just to me, but to the work. He thought because I was a waitress, I was nothing. He thought you were just a wallet, so he could take from you. He didn't respect anything. I was just tired of it. I'm tired of men like that thinking they can break things just because they're bored. Arthur nodded, a long, slow nod. He seemed to understand. You're right, he said. My rudeness was a shield, but it was also a form of that. I was breaking things because I was bored and hurt. I thought because I had money, I was above common decency. He looked at her, and the last traces of the viper were gone. His eyes were just blue, clear. You didn't just save my company, Elena. You reminded me of what's important. Elara would have loved you. That, more than the money, more than the job, made Eleanor's heart swell. Thank you, Arthur, she said, using his first name without thinking. He smiled, a real, genuine smile. It transformed his face. Get in the car, Elena. You have a busy day tomorrow. We're building a foundation. She smiled back, and for the first time in over a year, she felt completely, unshakably, and fearlessly safe. 6 months later, the Gilded Sparrow was a fond but distant memory. Elena Sanchez no longer wore a black apron. She wore sharp, custom-tailored theory suits, a wardrobe provided by the company, but her feet were still planted firmly on the ground. She sat at a large, reclaimed wood conference table, not in the cold steel tower of Vance Holdings, but in a light-filled, brick-and-beam office in the Seaport district. This was the headquarters of the Elara Vance Foundation. The permits for the detox center in Dorchester are approved, she said, addressing the board. Construction begins Monday. Our first round of grants for community-based recovery coaching has funded 12 different programs. And I've spoken with the dean at Suffolk, my old school. We're endowing a full-ride scholarship for social workers specializing in addiction. The board, a mix of medical professionals, community leaders, and a few of Arthur's most trusted and reformed executives, applauded. Elena was a natural. Her 4.0 GPA wasn't just for show. She was sharp, empathetic, and most importantly, utterly relentless. She navigated the complex worlds of city bureaucracy, medical-grade procurement, and vulnerable populations with the same fearless efficiency she'd used to manage her restaurant section. Arthur Vance sat at the end of the table. He was a different man. He still ran his empire, but the viper was gone. The press now called him Boston's philanthropist. He was quieter. He listened more. His rudeness had been replaced by a focus, but the focus was no longer on profit margins. It was on impact. He was also, Elena had discovered, surprisingly funny. After the meeting, he walked with her to her office. "You handled Dr. Peterson well," Arthur noted. "He's difficult. He reminds me of me, actually." "He just needed to be heard, Arthur," Elena said, grabbing her coat. "And he needed to be told no. You can't just throw money at a problem. You have to build a solution. He'll come around." "I have no doubt," Arthur said. He paused. "Dinner tonight?" This had become their new routine. Twice a week they would have a working dinner. They'd started at places like the Gilded Sparrow. But now, more often than not, they just ordered takeout to her office. "Can't," she said. "I'm having dinner with my mother. She's flying to Italy tomorrow." "Ah, yes." The trip, Arthur smiled. Maria Sanchez, her health fully restored thanks to the best doctors money could buy, was now living her dream. "Tell her I said, buon viaggio." "I will, but I can do a quick drink. 1 hour. I have to go over the quarterly reports with you anyway." "Perfect." They went to a quiet bar at the Boston Harbor Hotel. It was the kind of place Elena would have been invisible in 6 months ago. Now, the maitre d' greeted them by name. "Mr. Vance, Miss Sanchez, your usual table?" As they sat, a man from a nearby table walked over. He was an older gentleman, well-dressed, with a kind face. "Excuse me," the man said, directing his words to Arthur. I don't mean to interrupt. My name is Robert. I read about your foundation. My son. We lost him 3 years ago. Addiction. What you're doing... Thank you. God bless you." The man's eyes were full of tears. Arthur, the man who used to have waiters fired for making eye contact, stood up. He shook the man's hand. "Thank you, Robert," Arthur said, his voice thick. I'm just sorry I didn't start sooner." The man nodded, patted Arthur's shoulder, and walked away. Arthur sat down, silent for a long moment, staring into his glass of water. Still, no ice, no lemon. Elena reached across the table and, for the first time, put her hand over his. His hand was warm. He looked up, his blue eyes meeting hers. "You did good, Arthur," she said softly. "No," he said, turning his hand over to gently clasp hers. "We did good." The waiter, a new hire, approached nervously. "Mr. Vance? Miss Sanchez, can I get you something?" Arthur looked up at the young man, who was trembling slightly. He smiled, a warm, genuine smile. "We're fine, son," he said. "Take your time. We're in no rush at all." Elena watched the exchange, and she smiled too. The Viper was gone, and in his place was just a man. A good man. And she, the waitress who had dared to walk over, was no longer just serving tables. She was, she realized, helping to change the world. And she was just getting started. This is the story of Eleanor and Arthur. It's a story that reminds us that behind the scariest reputations, there is often a hidden pain. Behind the title of Billionaire or Waitress, there is just a person. Elena's strength wasn't in challenging a rich man. It was in her fearless refusal to see only a rich man. She saw a person in pain and offered not fear, but simple, professional dignity. She didn't just get a new job. She helped a man find his soul. True power isn't about being feared. It's about having the courage to be vulnerable and the bravery to see the humanity in others, even when it's hidden. If this story touched your heart, please help our channel grow. Click that like button. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it, and most importantly, hit subscribe and ring the bell so you never miss a new story. We all have the power to change a life. What act of courage will you perform today?